I read you the statement from the NFL Executive Vice President of Communications. This is Joe Lockhart that we just received. And once again, it says, over the last couple of days, we've received multiple reports of the NFL Players Association spreading derogatory information to the media about the victim in Ezekiel Elliott discipline case. Common tactic to attempt to prove the innocence of the accused by discrediting the victim. And in this case, Ms. Thompson, the accuser, when coming forward to report such abuse. Common or not, these tactics are shameful. Efforts to shame and blame victims are often what prevents people from coming forward to report violence and or seek help in the first place. It's a 160-page report. This was the only portion that was leaked to Yahoo Sports' Charles Robinson. Mike Florio, kind enough to join us on short notice, on loan from Pro Football Talk on NBC Sports Network. Mike, what do you make of this on both sides?
Well, look, this 160-page report was generated, compiled, written by the NFL as part of the Ezekiel Elliott investigation. And the allegation that the NFLPA is leaking portions of it to make Tiffany Thompson look bad, I assume the NFL has credible evidence, or they wouldn't be making that accusation. If they're making that accusation without credible evidence, they may have a separate legal problem with the union. But, Dan, this all traces back to something the NFL created. This isn't an effort by anyone else to go out there and compile negative information about Tiffany Thompson to make her look bad. There's 160 pages of information that has things in there that make her look bad. And one of the articles, there's actually been 3 articles, one each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yahoo's was yesterday. Fort Worth Star-Telegram had some excerpts on Monday from the report. And on Tuesday, it was an article posted on the website owned by the NFL that makes Tiffany Thompson look bad. It related to a claim of harassment made by Ezekiel Elliott because she had allegedly called him more than 50 times in a 7-hour window and hacked his email account. That article was published on the web servers owned and operated by the NFL. So the NFL, in multiple ways, is complicit in the very thing they're accusing the NFLPA of. That's what made the statement yesterday so astounding. Now, setting that aside, I think what Lockhart was trying to do was get it to stop. And we'll see if it stops. But the NFL doesn't have clean hands on this one. And I don't know of any evidence at this point to suggest that the NFLPA is the one that was leaking it. I've talked to multiple officials from the union, and I haven't had any reason to think that they're trying to leak any negative information or otherwise make her look bad.
I was told yesterday, 2 days ago, that the NFL Players Association was just going to file the appeal, but they weren't necessarily involved in this as much as it was turned over to Ezekiel Elliott's lawyers here. The role of the NFL Players Association, that's why it surprised me that now they're being accused of leaking this to Yahoo Sports to somehow taint her testimony. But explain to me as a lawyer, once you get into this the appeal process here, is this more civil suit type stuff? And can you argue, sort of like Johnny Cochran did with the O.J. trial, it became more about the LAPD than it did O.J. Simpson? Is this more about one side saying we're going to, go after the accuser instead of, try to answer questions about Ezekiel Elliott?
Well, but here's the thing. To the extent that there is witness credibility that is tied up in all of this, and if there is evidence to suggest that Ezekiel Elliott tried to end the relationship with Tiffany Thompson and she vowed vengeance on him, if that clouts her credibility, it all comes down to, and you mentioned the civil court concept, it's the civil standard of proof that applies in this case. More likely than not, preponderance of the evidence, 51-49, who do you believe a little bit more than the other? And that's why it's also important that it be fleshed out in an appropriate way with opportunities to question witnesses, cross-examine witnesses. Ezekiel Elliott's representatives haven't had a chance to ask a single question of Tiffany Thompson in this process so far. And one thing I've asked the NFL today, and I'm waiting for the answer, I want to know what the actual standard is during these appeals. How much deference is given to the decision that was already made, or do we just start this thing from scratch and have a trial, essentially, before the arbitrator? And if that's the case, then who knows what the outcome's going to be if you start from scratch and you let witnesses be questioned and you have people be cross-examined. And that's really what should happen at some point, and that hasn't happened yet. And it's hard to have a reliable decision on any of these issues until there's a chance to question witnesses the way that you would in a court of law.
One more item. I was told that keep an eye on if the commissioner was going to hear this appeal, and if he doesn't, then Jerry Jones may lay off in trying to file a lawsuit. That, he wants Roger to be out of it and have a neutral, independent arbitrator here. Tell me, do you think there's a reason why the commissioner is not hearing this appeal?
Well, the fact that the commissioner made the initial decision makes it more awkward for him to handle the appeal. The commissioner didn't make the initial decision in the Tom Brady case. Troy Vincent did. So the commissioner handled that appeal. Now, Harold Henderson is a guy who's a former NFL employee. He's handled, at least from the window of 2008 through November of 2014, 87 of these appeals. And they pay him to do it. He doesn't do it as a favor to anybody. So you can carve out a nice little side practice in your law practice handling these appeals. So, if you don't give the NFL the decisions they hope for often enough, you're not going to be asked to handle those appeals. So there isn't true independence here. And I thought the one thing that the commissioner could do to get Jerry Jones off of his back for good is hire somebody that Jones approved of, who is truly independent, who has no designs on having any of these future cases for the NFL. One shot only, have this person do it. The problem is the last two times the commissioner's done something like that, the NFL's lost.
Oh, boy. What's the window here of opportunity for Ezekiel Elliott to have this heard and then try to be in the lineup that opening night, Sunday night?
Oh, it's going to be resolved by week one. They'll get this. He'll be allowed to play until they resolve the appeal. They'll get the appeal resolved before week one, Dan. The question then becomes, who goes to court first? Remember, with Brady, it was the NFL that actually went to court first because they picked what they thought was a favorable forum for winning, and they ultimately did win, although at first they lost. And what happened? Tom Brady played a full year before he had to serve the suspension. So there are still multiple steps left in this. And if a judge decides to let Ezekiel Elliott play while the litigation goes forward, we'll see Ezekiel Elliott on the field until the litigation is resolved, which could be for all of the 2017 season.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on short notice.
All right, Dan. See you, bud.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.